another episode of Paint, Productivity, and Profit, a special new podcast series sponsored by Sherwin-Williams. And I have two very special guests in the studio today. We have Joe Banks, who is the Senior Sales Director of National Accounts. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Sure. And Chelsey Clemsen, who is the Senior Director of Segment Marketing. Welcome, Chelsey.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Sure. And so, Joe, this seems to come up with body shops quite often. Perhaps they're experiencing poor color, poor service, or any number of issues with one of their most important business partners, their paint supplier. Yet so many shop owners and managers put up with these problems. You know, us humans, we don't want to change. We never want to change. But there's so much change going on in collision repair, and there's so much change going on in publishing, take it from me. But so the change is a hard part for them to get over. And even if it's something that's a problem like this that might be costing them money every single day. So I guess my first question to you, Joe, would be why do shop owners resist change, and why is change so much difficult for them?
Yeah, it's a big decision they could potentially make, and I think there's fear of the unknown. And I think a lot of the times that the fear of change can be, the perception of it. And I think our job, and Chelsey will touch on this in a minute too, is to provide enough evidence to understand why change may be needed. And I think a lot of times we overestimate what we can get done in 2 or 3 months and underestimate what we can get done together in 3 or 4 years. So I think myself at home and at work, and Chelsey at home and work, we also don't enjoy change. But I think it's necessary to do so to make sure that we're doing the right things down the road, to keep our business safe, our employees employed, and grow our business like we see fit.
So Chelsey, tell me, what are some of the most common reasons that shops resist changing paint lines?
Yeah, good question. And Joe talked a little bit here about change and the fear of the unknown, and we see that with our shops as well. But one of the common things that we hear from them that they're resistant to change is they don't want to disrupt operations. That's something they're concerned about, that they want to make sure they're able to move forward in that conversion process, and then after the conversion process, making sure that they're able to run at full productivity. So in past conversions, they may have seen ones that have been costly or risky. And some of those risks that they may see is that painters may be uncomfortable with that change. The painters may have been using the same paint line for a really long time, or they're just really comfortable with their current supplier. So they might be concerned about productivity, they might be concerned about achieving color excellence, or they're just wanting to avoid redos. So that's something that we have to be mindful of when we're talking about change. And one of the other reasons that we commonly see them resisting change is that vendors sometimes overpromise and underdeliver. So you might have heard us talk about assurance in the past, really doing what we say we're going to do. And if they haven't had that experience with their vendors in the past, that may be something they're concerned about and why they're resisting the change.
The 4 A's, which we talked about in a previous podcast.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So Joe, talk to me about how as a partner you can help shops get closer to their intended growth and business goals, and how can you remove the obstacle of fear and what they can look to when changing to a new paint line advocate?
That's a good question. We have our own branches, our own salespeople, our own management. So from the very early parts of creating the paint to servicing it after the sale, we want to make that be clear that we can handle that with them. And every customer's goals can be different. We all have similarities in what we do every day, but everybody's businesses needs different things at different times. So we have unique ways to focus on that. We can look at the industry KPIs that we all know. We can also really take an individualized approach to do so. And also, I would really say that they're not the only ones to make the change over the past few years. Many have. And we can provide them people to talk to understand there's proof of concept of what we do. So we're very proud of that, and we encourage our prospective clientele to do so.
Okay. And Chelsey, what's one improvement or change that shops can consistently benefit from but may not realize they need?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of times what we hear from our shops after they've converted to Sherwin-Williams is they didn't understand the value of that true partnership, what it's like to be aligned with an organization that's dedicated to the same business goals that they have and helping them reach those goals. So in the past, they may have experienced challenges with things like security of supply or service from their distributors or tech support from the manufacturers. And as they've experienced those things, they come to Sherwin-Williams and they really see the value or the power of consistency. That's consistency in supply, consistency in support, and consistency with the right products and digital tools. And that really shines through with our direct distribution model. So our direct distribution model gives us the agility to deploy resources wherever they're needed. So that could be just one individual shop where we're doing some training or overcoming a challenge. That could be across an organization if they're looking to grow. So we often hear that times, I know Joe and his team hear it a lot when organizations are looking to expand and they want to partner with somebody that's able to do that with them. So when we say we grow with you, that's exactly what we mean. Whether it's one shop, multiple shops, we have a network across the country that can help support and support the customers. So we have dedicated employees that are committed to their business goals and connected to an integrated supply chain that can help them from the moment they order the product till it's delivered at their doorstep.
We grow with you. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So how do you guys support shops through the transition process and post-conversion? What do you do for them?
So we've been through the most complicated conversions to the one-off, and I grew up in Iowa, the one in Des Moines, Iowa. We've done that. And I can tell you what she said about deploying our resources nationwide matters because we can give you the same outcome regardless of the state you're in. So our training staff, stores, representatives, and I can tell you Chelsey and her team really take a unique approach to doing so. And we know how to, how do you know it's going well before it's done? There's milestones built into that. And quite often our customers really need to know that it's going well. One of the perceived misconceptions we may have here is that day one it's going to be disruptive to our business. And we often hear, we just did a larger conversion here recently where the painters after our first car, they're ready to go. We're really proud of that. Our products are lined up and we make it repeatable and we know what's going to happen. So weeks prior to the conversion, during the conversion, and post-conversion, there's ways to keep track and ways to keep score and way to report in to our new customers that things are going as intended, and we're very proud of that.
Wow, that's great. So what type of process, let's call it a conversion roadmap, does Sherwin-Williams implement, and what are the key steps in converting a shop to an entirely new paint line?
Yeah, absolutely. So the conversion roadmap is definitely an important part of our process. Joe talked a little bit about it there. And when we talked about change, one of the things that we discussed was they need to be able to maintain their productivity, not just maintain it, but increase that productivity. So how do we help them get there? And that's why we have this consistent process that our team has been disciplined in following. And like Joe mentioned, that's through pre-conversion, during the conversion process, and then most importantly, following through after the conversion to ensure they're able to maintain and increase that. So the first step in that process is really agreeing on a timeline with the customer. So we talk to them about what works best for them. It could be the best day of the week, the best week of the month, making sure that we're aligned with their vacation schedules. Choosing a time that works best for the shop is the first step. So once we agree on that, then our branches play a big part in the pre-conversion process. So pre-conversion, that's everything from ordering in product, it's setting up computers, coordinating drop-off times with our sales team, and we see that value of our branches being directly connected with our tech reps and our sales reps throughout that process. So shops really don't skip a beat with equipment, with toners, with other products that they need to have, or with getting up to speed on digital tools. So after we have that pre-conversion process, we jump into conversion day. Conversion day, we know that it's still important for them to run efficiently on that day. So the team is very disciplined about ensuring that they have paint mixed for the day or that the painters have everything they need ready to go before we go ahead and revamp that mixing room. So when we revamp it, it's everything from cleaning the mixing room to painting it to pulling out old equipment, putting in new equipment, and making sure they're able to start fresh with a fresh set of toners and other products. So when we get in there on the first day of training, typically the following week, we're there as soon as the painter arrives with our technical representatives to support them throughout that process. And we're committed to being there for an entire week with them. But like Joe mentioned, we typically see that it takes a lot less time than that to get up to speed. So it could be a day, 2 days, but we'll be there to support them all week and then after that as well. So our technical representatives have really dialed in that process. And after the conversion, you'll really see our direct distribution model at work. Our branches are aligned with our global supply chain to increase the inventory they need to support that customer or group of customers. They have consistent delivery schedules that they stick to and are disciplined in that. And then our technical and sales teams are very good at conducting business reviews, measuring metrics to see how things are going, and seeing how we can get the shops to the next level. So it goes far beyond just the conversion process.
Wow, you guys have eased my fears completely. But as we know, the fear of change is often ever present and sometimes hard to overcome. So Joe, if a shop is hesitant to make changes, are these concerns perceived or real objections? And what advice would you give them to ease their concerns?
You know, like I said earlier, you're not the first collision center to go through this process. And I think there is, during our process and discussions over time to get to this point, we do a pretty good job of easing those concerns, but there's also a very low cost, low risk, low time way to look under the hood with us. You know, we have a way to demonstrate our products, our procedures, our people, really get to know us while, again, we make the introductions to others that have done similar things before, and we keep score. You know, everything we've talked about over the last month or two to get to this point matters. Now it's our time to show that this is what we do. We're proud of it. We can walk away and can run a very successful business without us, and we're only a phone call away to make sure that everything is going as planned. Because after the installation, the work begins. You know, we don't walk away and that's it. We call it enriching our customers' experience with us for the next 10, 20 years. That's our goal.
Wow, so I mean, it really sounds like shops can switch paint lines, and it doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be full of headaches. It can be seamless, and they don't have to lose productivity. It sounds like a system that works. So tell me, guys, if our viewers want to know more information about Sherwin-Williams and how they can go about transitioning paint lines, where would they go to?
They can click on a special URL that we've got on the screen here. They can pause the podcast or take a picture from the displayed QR code here as well. Of course, they can call our regional, local Sherwin-Williams branches or contact the area store, and they can get all the information they need from there.
Great. Well, thanks again for your time, Joe and Chelsey.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
That's a wrap on the latest episode of Paint Productivity and Profit, sponsored by Sherwin-Williams. I'm Jason Stahl. Thanks for watching.